Hello, everyone. I am going to discuss the Grammys, or as many call it, the Scammies. I've talked about the Grammys in the past, but I hadn't in recent years done a full deep dive reaction to the ceremony in a few years. I thought I'd run through all of the categories that I feel I wanted to talk about, share my thoughts on the winners and the snubs. There always are so many. And as always, in the time that I've really followed the Grammys and looking back at its history, the snubs are always overshadowing the results for the winners that we might be otherwise rooting for. Because it's always a mixed bag. Some years are worse than others, but there are some things to really celebrate. But there's so many glaring headline grabbing snubs that just steal a lot of the excitement and good feeling we would otherwise have. So it's unfortunate that the Grammys, especially, really get things so, in my opinion, they're just a strange organization. And I wanted to highlight as we get talking about the big categories, particularly album of the year. I've seen, shared on social media some ops written by some of the actual Grammy voters who are allowed to remain anonymous, which I do not agree with. Show yourself, stand behind your vote. But they said something about the album of the year category and how basically they didn't really like any of the nominees, which is okay, that's somewhat fair, but they didn't give most of them or any of them a real fair chance or even a listen. Lana Del Rey in particular was just completely brushed aside by this one voter because of a 12-year-old SNL performance that Lana can still never live down, even though she has proven that she is so much more than that performance, and her career is not something to overlook, as we can see by critical acclaim of recent years. So it's just so offensive that a Grammy voter would not even entertain listening to Ocean Boulevard, and just looking at the name of Lana Del Rey, just completely scoff and say, why would I vote for her? And they basically admitted to only voting for Taylor Swift because it's Taylor Swift, and they didn't even really listen to the album, but they felt that Taylor had been a cultural moment and in the conversation and making the most headlines in 2023. So, of course, we have to give it to her. I mean, this is a complete and utter failure of the esteem and quality control that the Grammys should be about. This is not the American Music Awards. This is not the Billboard Music Awards. This is supposed to be, an organization that is about, actually, if any organization is going to have voters who actually listen to the music and care about songwriting and musicianship, it would be this organization. But apparently it is flush with people who have a lot of biases. I saw some other people, it's come out, I think Matthew Knowles might have actually leaked this, that Columbia Records is partially to blame for Beyonce never having won Album of the Year, because Columbia can only really oftentimes allocate a lot of their push and recommendation and promotion to the Academy for one of their artists and one of their projects. So in the case of last year, Harry Styles is also on Columbia Records. And so Columbia put all of their push and oomph on Harry's house. And just, I guess their logic was Renaissance and Beyonce is so popular already that she didn't need the accolade of Album of the Year. And that was the same reasoning behind, I believe, the 25 Lemonade debacle as well, even though I think it's quite as easily, by that point, Adele was almost as successful as Beyonce. So that's a bit of a stranger, that's harder for me to believe, but one could see how, a record label shouldn't have to pick and choose favorites and not be able to promote both two artists at the same time to the Academy. So I think Columbia Records has really been letting Beyonce down in that department. It's just all around a really, Drake called it out. I don't, I don't always agree with him, but he has a point. This is an organization. Jay-Z, let's talk about that speech. Jay-Z said what we all were thinking, and it probably made a lot of those stuffy suits really uncomfortable. If he had gotten another couple minutes of the mic, he probably would have started naming who shouldn't have been in some of those categories. That was pretty savage. I must admit, I mean, as much as, again, Jay-Z, I even more so kind of feel like he's a little tone deaf sometimes, reading the room. I think he was spot on and kind of highlighting just how ridiculous it is, even if we're just talking about Beyonce. That I mean, the bigger issue is this women of color, particularly, but to some degree, men of color as well. And in this case, we're going to be specifically talking about Black artists, but I do think it's also important to recognize that not only has a Black woman not won Album of the Year since 1999, but a woman of color has not won. Now, I suppose Norah Jones is the one kind of one where you're sort of like, well, is she a woman of color? I don't want to, jump into a minefield there, but that I won't wade into that too much, but certainly not a Black woman. And so and even then, Norah Jones was back in 2002. So it's been over 20 years. So what has been going on with the Academy and Album of the Year? And then, of course, there's also the fact that I made a video last year ranking the Song of the Year winners, which has been a little bit more well-rounded in terms of diversity. But those categories could still use some help as well. I also think that it's absolutely insane that not only is it insane that Beyonce has never won Album of the Year, yet having I can't remember exactly the number, at least over 30 nominations in her career. I think I read at one point 52. Is that correct? The most nominations, I believe, of any artist. But she's never won Album of the Year, and she's never won Record of the Year either, if I'm not mistaken. She won Song of the Year for Single Ladies, which I disagree with. I think that should have gone for Record because Single Ladies, if we're rewarding songwriting, it's one of her worst songs, one of her worst hits. So I think a lot of Beyonce fans can agree. So that's a bit egregious. But not only is that an egregious snub, but Taylor Swift, the Grammy darling, who's won now 4 Album of the Years, more than any other artist. She has now beat Stevie Wonder and Frank Sinatra. She has never won Song of the Year. Song of the Year, she has never won. She has won Record of the Year. She has never won Song of the Year. And I think that's absolutely insane. I don't understand at all. Taylor is a songwriter. I mean, if anything, that's her MO. So, I talked about last year, I think All Too Well, the 10-minute version was kind of bizarre. It was kind of bizarre. And it's frustrating because I would have been much happier with her taking home that award than I would with Midnight's winning Album of the Year or even Pop Vocal. But I can take Pop Vocal. But Album of the Year and I will get into it, it's a travesty. It's a travesty. I don't know if it's more of a travesty than Harry's House beating Renaissance. But I don't know. It's not good. It's not good. So, I mean, is Harry's House worse than Midnight's? Both of them are not really albums that I would necessarily call horrible, but they are both not on the level of quality that I expect from, to be honest with you, even an Album of the Year nominee. Although I can understand with both of them being nominated. But they are not phenomenal records. They are certainly not Album of the Year winning quality records. So, don't understand. I mean, at least Harry has the edge of never having won before. Because he should have, arguably, Fine Line, I would have been okay with that. Fine Line kind of deserved it more, but, even his self-titled debut. But with all that being said, why don't we let's get into the list here. I caught half of the Grammys live, and then I didn't, catch the beginning, so I went back and watched the non-televised portion of the awards. And so I'm not going to talk about everything. I'm especially not going to talk about every category because there are there are 50 categories at the Grammys, which I think is great because, I do like that the Grammy Awards really do dive into categories and award artists that, don't get any kind of exposure. But we're going to kind of skip through a lot of these categories. I'm also not going to talk about all of the performances. I just want to spotlight a couple. I'll do that at the end. The first category I want to mention is Best Instrumental Composition. So this is kind of like the best song of the year for largely movie soundtracks, but it can also be for video games and other media and just general albums. And Helena's theme from the Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny soundtrack won. Very head scratching. It's also very head scratching that the Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny score by John Williams was nominated for Best Score at the Academy Awards. Yes, I will be talking about the Oscars. I will be making a similar video after they air. Very excited for the Oscars this year. But Can You Hear the Music by Ludwig Göransson was right there. It's the only song, I'll confess, out of these nominees that I've heard and I have bias towards, but Oppenheimer, as we'll get to, won the Best Music for Visual Media award. So I don't quite understand why they didn't also give him what was clearly deservingly a better song than, I haven't heard Helena's theme, but from what I understand, from what people have said, the music from that Indiana Jones movie, which I have not seen, is anything but memorable. It's very forgettable and undeserving of these kind of nominations. It's a legacy win for John Williams. Best Immersive Audio Album went to The Diary of Alicia Keys, which is a 2003 album that got re-released with immersive mastering and engineering. This is a really strange one. I'm not sure if this has happened before where an artist has resubmitted an album that got recently remastered to be like a specific kind of audio. But The Diary of Alicia Keys didn't end up winning anything at the Grammys in 2005, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. I do not believe that this album, it was nominated, but I do not believe it won anything. So to see it get a little bit of dues here, I'm a big Alicia Keys fan. And it is one of her better records. So, okay. But I think a lot of people were upset Madison Beer was snubbed. But come on, these categories, it's like, who cares? I'm sorry. We come to Best Engineered Album Non-Classical. Ended up going to the engineering for Jaguar 2, the Victoria Monet record. 100% okay with this. This was Victoria Monet's night. She did take home a lot of the awards that I wanted her to. However, personally, I would have preferred giving it to Caroline Polachek and, of course, all of her producers and engineers for Desire, I Want to Turn Into You. It is absolutely heinous that this album is not nominated in any other categories, even alternative record. They would have probably put it in the pop category, I'm not sure, but it didn't get a Best Pop Vocal nomination. It should have gotten Album of the Year. It should have gotten an Album of the Year nomination at the very least. I possibly would have even awarded it Album of the Year. But Caroline Polachek getting so snubbed by the Grammys when other critical publications eat her music up is very, very bizarre. We talk about Lana Del Rey having a really hard time with Grammys, but Caroline Polachek is also struggling even more, and I'm not entirely sure. I think maybe, Caroline's been around for a while with her old band. I wonder if it's just taking a little longer and her next record will maybe finally get the Grammys' attention more. I don't quite understand. And so that's a bit frustrating to me. I don't understand why the Grammys weren't paying at all any attention to Caroline. Because she was getting so much critical acclaim from, magazines like, publications like Pitchfork. But these voters don't exactly intersect, I suppose. This was a weird batch of nominees here. Best Music Video went to I'm Only Sleeping by The Beatles. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when did the Beatles put out a song called I'm Only Sleeping? If I'm not mistaken, they put out a new song in November, but it had a completely different title, and it's escaping me at the moment. So when did they put out this song in this video? I'm very confused there. Haven't seen it, but I was definitely kind of rooting for What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish. I would have been okay with Kendrick Lamar or Troye Sivan taking it. But again, it's a weird category because, I agree that music videos are not what they used to be. We're not seeing a lot of artists putting in a lot of effort. No one wants to make music videos anymore in the Kim Kardashian voice. I think Beyonce might have something to do with that, but I also think a lot of it has to do with TikTok. But Beyonce decided, I'm gonna stop doing visuals, and y'all are gonna stop too. It's like, I made you all start doing visual albums, and now I'm gonna stop, and you all are gonna copy me. Let's put out a couple visuals here and there, right? I mean, what's going on? Best song written for visual media is different from best instrumental song. So it's specifically a song written for visual media. What Was I Made For from Barbie won, and I am very pleased with this. I was hoping that What Was I Made For was going to sweep pretty much every category it was nominated for. Although I was happy it didn't win record of the year, and we'll talk about that when we get to that category. Um, I'm very, I mean, Barbie had 4 out of the 5 nominations here. Lift Me Up from Black Panther Wakanda, which again, we might be all like, oh my God, why is that here? That's from last year. Well, almost the year before. But the Grammy eligibility window is really weird. It does not match up with the Oscars. I really wish it did. It doesn't match up with the Emmys either. They're all their own eligibility windows, and it makes award season completely chaotic to keep up with. But I think again, it was Billy's night. It was Billy's award, and I do think What Was I Made For is the most deserving song from the Barbie album to win any of these big awards at either the Golden Globes, Oscars, or the Grammys. I want to shout out the best score soundtrack for video games and other interactive media. Star Wars Jedi Survivor was the winner, but I would have loved to have seen Hogwarts Legacy win because a lot of people might have a lot of things to say about that video game. One thing you can't say is that it doesn't have phenomenal music. Really, really lush orchestral music. So I would have given that one to I would have given it that bone, but okay, I understand. Best score soundtrack for visual media, including film and television, went to Oppenheimer with Ludwig Göransson. No surprise here. Again, how did Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny get this nomination? There definitely is some overlap between the Grammy voting body and the Oscars voting body. And so clearly, that's just what the industry is deciding to, I don't know, John Williams is getting up there, and how many more movies is he going to score? So I think they're wanting to throw him these bones, but very bizarre. The only other winner here I would have been okay with was Barbie. Granted, I have not seen The Fabelmans, so, John Williams would have also won for that. But it was Oppenheimer. The Oppenheimer score is, especially upon second viewing of the film, really haunting and really well orchestrated. So I am 100% on board with an Oppenheimer sweep in that category. Best compilation soundtrack for visual media is more about sort of like a playlist of songs that may or may not feature in the movie. That's different from a soundtrack album. And Barbie, the album, won this category, and I am 100% down with that. I think for all that people have things to say about that album, for all that it is a little corny, I think it does a pretty good job at encapsulating the sort of plastic bubblegum pop that Barbie is about. There's a little bit for everyone genre-wise on that record. There's definitely some artists I would have preferred make an appearance on it. There's definitely some Kias on there, as they say on the Twitter streets. But I mean, it got me actually it spotlighted some artists that needed the spotlight. So in some ways, I'm okay with it. So Barbie definitely, Mark Ronson, he knows how to polish together these kinds of pop records. So actually my second best pick would have been the Black Panther Wakanda Forever compilation record. There are some amazing African Afrobeat songs featured on that project. It's way better than I think even the first Black Panther compilation album that Kanye West curated. This album, the Black Panther Wakanda Forever soundtrack, not soundtrack, but compilation album, has a ton of bangers that I actually really did kind of like a good 5 or 6 of those songs have been on rotation over the last year and a half. Shout out to Michelle Obama. She won Best Audiobook, Narration, and Storytelling Recording. She couldn't be there to accept the award, though. Not surprising. I am very disappointed to see that Dave Chappelle won Best Comedy Album. If you know, Dave Chappelle is very controversial with his comedy these days. Really seems to be leaning into the transphobia, and it's really unfortunate. Unless Enya is nominated, the best new age ambient or chant album is usually full of people I've never heard of. Congrats to So She Howls by Carla Patullo and the Scorchio Quartet. Mad respect. This is a category that no one else pays attention to, but I do. But I must confess, I have never listened to any of these artists, though I do know who Olafur Arnalds is. I have never listened to any of these albums. Best African Music Performance went to Water by Tyla. I definitely agree that that was probably the clear winner here. She just had such a breakout year. Though I also really love Unavailable by Deaville. That's another song I've been really enjoying this year. So, could have seen it go to him as well. I know Deaville has a lot of fans who were rooting for him. Mañana Será Bonito won Best Musica Urbana Album. I spotlight that because that's the only other album in the Latin categories that I'm very familiar with. I had heard a couple songs from Raul Alejandro's album as well, but I agree Carol G deserved it here, though there were only 3 nominees. Best Folk Album went to Joni Mitchell at Newport Live. So this is a live album of hers. I mean, Joni Mitchell hasn't released an actual new album in 24 years, 23 years. And she hasn't done a lot of live performances, especially televised ones. But Brandi Carlile has been really coaxing her back onto the stage. And so we got this wonderful moment during the telecast portion where Joni Mitchell performed Both Sides Now. And yes, we all know that her voice is not what it once was. She's 80 years old, but she doesn't look great. I think she's maybe doing a lot better than she was a few years ago. Unfortunately, she did have a stroke in 2015. So I'm happy to see that she seems to be, well recovered from that, at least publicly. And I mean, seeing her on stage is such a treasure. I mean, she still can deliver that emotion, even if, her voice is obviously very different from what we're used to with her. I mean, she looked so regal on this gorgeous armchair with her cane. It felt like the whole room had her attention, and we were watching a true, matron of singer-songwriting just sort of capture, sort of take all the kids to school. And I think that was a really haunting and beautiful moment on stage to see her. I'm glad I caught that part live on the telecast. I would have liked to have seen, well, I don't really have a horse in this race, but I Remember Everything did not win Best Country Song. White Horse by Chris Stapleton did. Chris Stapleton is a darling. I'm not surprised it went to him. I'm very glad that Last Night by Morgan Wallen did not win, though. But I Remember Everything did win Best Country Duo Group Performance with Casey Musgraves. So I suppose it's fair because, spread the love around. That is one of the songs I highlighted in my favorite songs of the year. I mean, I only really knew of it because of Casey. I don't really follow male country artists. But Chris Stapleton also won Best Country Solo Performance. I mean, whatever. Dolly Parton had a nomination on there, but she didn't win. It wasn't... Dolly's nomination wouldn't have been for Rockstar, because that's not in this eligibility window. So I'm not entirely sure when that song came out. Because her Run, Rose, Run album wouldn't have been in this eligibility period either. So I don't know what that song, Dolly Parton song is. I've actually never heard of it, but happy to see her nominated. In Best Rap Song, I think it's important to highlight that Barbie World with Ice Spice and Nicki Minaj did not win. I think this was touted as possibly Nicki Minaj's best chance at ever possibly getting a Grammy. She's never won one. And I wasn't going to spend, because this video cannot get too long, I wasn't going to spend too much time harping on about Nicki Minaj, but I do just want to say that I am a lot less upset about her getting snubbed after the chicanery that she has been pulling on Twitter with this Megan Thee Stallion beef. I'm just going to say, as someone, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Barb, but as someone who has always loved Nicki Minaj's music and has covered her on this channel quite a bit, I am extremely, extremely disappointed at her behavior. And it's gotten to the point where I am wanting to turn in my Barb membership. It's a real shame It's a real shame. An artist actively torching their legacy like that is just, it's wild to watch it in real time. I mean, to see someone have absolutely no filter, which we, sometimes is refreshing, but to just be so careless and so reckless with how they use social media and how they talk about other artists, their peers, and especially for her age. She's a 40-year-old woman with a child. I mean, she should know better. She's not showing at all any ounce of maturity, and it is just really, really borderline very, very concerning. I'm a little bit concerned about Nikki being around people that are not having her best interest at heart. She's uh, potentially drugs. I mean, it's really, really distressing. So that's all I'm going to say there. I wouldn't have minded also if Doja Cat with Attention had won either Best Rap Song or Best Melodic Rap Performance. I don't entirely know what the difference is between these two categories, but I would have loved to have seen Attention by Doja Cat win either of them, because I know a lot of people have a lot to say about Doja, but she's got some good songs on Scarlet, and Attention is not one of the worst ones. I mean, I'll definitely say that. But Best R&B Album went to Jaguar 2. This was Victoria Monet's probably most surefire win, but still really happy to see it. Victoria Monet has been in the game for so long as a songwriter, putting out records, and to see her in her 30s finally get her dues is a really, she really deserves it. However, for Best Progressive R&B Album, SZA took home the award. I have no idea what the difference is between progressive R&B and standard R&B. So if anyone wants to eliminate me in the comments, Janelle Monáe was nominated in this category for The Age of Pleasure, and I don't think that is her strongest album at all. It might actually be her weakest, but it's still a Janelle Monáe record. You're expecting some level of quality, and it still is delivered. So I would have been okay with that for being the win, but this was obviously clearly SZA's win. I think it's great that SZA and Victoria Monet did not have to compete against each other in the same category, even though I'm not entirely sure why they didn't. I don't know what the differentiation is between these two categories. And then SZA took home Best R&B Song. So she did beat out, Victoria Monet. So that made me think, although Angel by Halle Bailey, don't sleep on that one. I'm really upset that Halle Bailey isn't going to pursue a solo album after all. We're not sure. Halle Bailey has a kid now, and there's actually talks of Chloe and Halle reuniting. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's going to go on with that. Really would love to see Halle deliver a full solo body of work. I hope she still does. But neither SZA nor Victoria Monet could take home Best Traditional R&B Performance. I could sort of see how that's a little bit more of a different category, because that might be more old school, stripped down kind of acoustic stuff. I'm again curious to hear if anyone wants to talk about how these are different. Best R&B Performance went to Coco Jones. So they really spread the love around. They gave Victoria, Coco, and SZA their flowers. Good for them. Good for them. This is, again, probably based on live performance versus studio cut. Best Alternative Music Album. This is a frustrating category. First of all, where is Caroline? Like I said, if you're not going to put Caroline in this category, put her in Best Pop Vocal, but I would almost put her more in Alternative, especially if you're putting Lana Del Rey in an Alternative. I think you should also put Caroline in Alternative. So what the heck is her erasure here? I really should check out the PJ Harvey album. I will confess I have not really gotten into PJ Harvey's music. I know it was a big deal that she put out a new album. But I just, as a Björk fan, I should probably be keeping up with her, but because she's a contemporary that a lot of Björk fans also gloat about, but I just have not gotten into her music. There's still so many artists to keep track of. And, I wasn't really, I'm still kind of young. I'm still kind of young, okay? But they ended up giving it to Boy Genius, the record, which is Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus, and someone else. This kind of girl group that formed. I think I said someone online said that Boy Genius is one of the first supergroups to be worse as a supergroup than when the artists are individually solo. And I only loosely know Phoebe Bridgers' work. I've heard some of her music, and I did listen to snippets of this record to try and piecemeal any songs that were standing out to me. And it wasn't doing anything for me. I'm going to be completely honest. I think that the Boy Genius record is the perfect example of alternative music that I really need a melody for. I really need something to kind of stand out beyond just very murky, undynamic kind of chords and melodies. So sonically, it's just not interesting to me. I'm sure lyrically there is a lot to dissect, though I heard a lot of people say this album is not all that. So, it's a bit divisive. Again, I would have given it to Lana Del Rey. I think if you can't give her album of the year, you gotta at least give her alternative. Give her her flowers. It's about dang time. What does Lana Del Rey have to do? So we'll talk again about this, but I'm really disappointed. There's the people in the Academy just they really don't respect her. I mean, at least she's getting the nominations now. She didn't get nominated for Ultraviolence, which is insane to me. So that showed that even back then they really didn't like her. But she can, if she couldn't, as someone said, if she couldn't win any of these categories for NFR, I don't know if Ocean Boulevard really did stand a chance unless the Grammys were finally saying it's time to give her her flowers. Because let's be real, I love Ocean Boulevard, but objectively, I do think NFR is a stronger record. There's just, it's a better but cohesive body of work. There's less skips. There are a couple skips on Ocean Boulevard. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, it is. If she can't win it for NFR, that makes me worried. That makes me worried. Supposedly, she has another album coming out this fall, and it's going to be country, which I don't know how I feel about that. It feels like it's about time for her to do country, and I'm sure I'd eat it up, but I also kind of feel like she's already kind of done country a little bit, because I feel like Chemtrails was kind of country, and even a bit of Blue Banisters. And I'm sort of like, I really don't really want her to go back to that sound. I want her to do something a little bit different, but okay. And then A&W didn't win Best Alternative Music Performance. Now, I am happy for Paramore, but This Is Why is not one of my favorite songs of theirs. It's not at all my favorite song from the This Is Why album. So, whatever. It was the only This Is Why song nominated. I would have given it to You First or Running Out of Time. There are much better songs on that record, but I'm happy for it. A&W, by the way, is not. I understand why Pitchfork and all these magazines or publications lauded it as one of the best songs of the year and the best song on Ocean Boulevard, but I don't quite understand it. I think A&W is fine. It's certainly not one of the worst songs on Ocean Boulevard, but there are at least 5 songs that I prefer over it on that record. So if you've seen my best songs of the year video, you've heard me talk about this. So it's a little puzzling to me. But again, if Lana could have taken it for A&W, I would have been very happy. So her not getting that, which I think she had an even better shot of winning, that's really upsetting. That's really upsetting. Although I always love to see Paramore win. Is this Paramore's first time winning a Grammy? They have not. That is absolutely insane. How did they not win for Misery Business? I don't get that. I don't get that. They were everywhere. How did they not win for Brand New Eyes, too? That's bizarre. Very bizarre. Or, honestly, After Laughter. Very bizarre. Okay. Best Pop Dance Recording. Padam Padam by Kylie Minogue. I am so happy for Kylie. This is her first Grammy in 2 decades, I believe. I think the last time she won a Grammy was for the Fever album. So really exciting for her. In this category bunch, I definitely am happy with it. I think Miracle is nothing special from Calvin Harris. He has way better pop dance tracks. Troye Sivan would be the only one here. Also, I would have been happy to see take home the win. Rush is really something special. And it would have been, wonderful to see Troye Sivan get that kind of accolade. But it is what it is. All right, here we come. Best Pop Vocal Album. Midnights by Taylor Swift. Yeah, it's really a strange category here. To be completely honest with you, I would have been happy with any of these other 4 nominees winning this award. Midnights would have probably been, Endless Summer Vacation. I love Miley. I love Miley, but I don't think that that is a strong album from her. I mean, it's not her worst, but it is not the strongest of a record. So, I mean, yeah, Miley did get her flowers at the end, literally. We'll talk about that. So I can't really be too upset about Miley getting snubbed at all. So I would have loved to have seen Kelly Clarkson take this, but I also had I had no expectation of her winning. It's just they play in her face. They nominated her for Meaning of Life and they snubbed her again. That was really upsetting to me because I actually prefer Meaning of Life to Chemistry, even though they are both phenomenal records, both way better than like Piece by Piece or Stronger. Those records are not as good. I think that Kelly came back and started making better records now that she's on Atlantic Records. And so Chemistry is a phenomenal Kelly record, up there with her best. And so I would have loved to seen her take it. I also would have been fine with Olivia Rodrigo. I think that Olivia going home empty-handed is a little unfortunate. So, that's a bit unfortunate. And then I also, believe it or not, I have some, stock in Ed Sheeran. I think it's very strange that the Grammys, although I'm glad they did nominate him for Subtract, I think it is kind of strange that the Grammys are not so down with him doing, I guess, yeah, I wouldn't say less pop, but his music now is a lot more, very much singer-songwriter, very much folk, kind of alternative, and they're not quite vibing with it the same way. I think Subtract is his best record yet, so I would have been okay with him taking that. But at the end of the day, we got to give it to Taylor. And again, I would have been okay with it because as long as she didn't win Album of the Year, it's like one thing. But Taylor announced during that win that she has her 11th studio album coming out in April called The Tortured Poets Department. And I'm not going to lie, I rolled my eyes. I was like, girl, it hasn't even been 2 years since Midnights. The dust is only settling on that last re-recording, and we all thought you wanted to be done with these re-recordings, so why not we just get that done? But more importantly, what does this mean for the Eras Tour? It makes absolutely no sense for her to put out an entirely new body of work while she is touring a very long, very full set list of songs for at least another 6 months after this album is released. People are speculating that she's going to move some things around, that she might trim down some songs from all of the other eras to make a new era. The show is already 3.5 hours long, so there's not a lot of room for her to add new songs in here. So I got to question it. But more than that, and we'll talk about it more in the final category, I don't think it does Taylor many favors with public opinion for her to take home this award. But I guess I can't really fault Taylor, I have to fault the Grammys, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who gave it to her. And obviously, she announced this album during Best Pop Vocal because she was a lot more certain she'd win this than she was Album of the Year. Best Pop Duo Performance went to Ghost in the Machine. I didn't even know that Phoebe Bridgers and SZA hooked up. I had just completely forgot about that. I'm okay with it. I mean, again, SZA needs any of the wins she can get here. But, Candy Necklace would have been my pick. Lana Del Rey and Jon Batiste, that is the it song. That is the A&W of Ocean Boulevard for me. And that song should have probably gotten the song Best Alternative nomination instead of A&W. But it's a collaboration song, so I guess they wanted to save it for this category. I don't know. But Best Pop Solo Performance went to Miley. And this I am 100% okay with. Because as much as I love Billie Eilish for What Was I Made For, I think that song is, if we're talking about pop solo performances, maybe not the most deserving. It'll get its flowers in the other more kind of prestigious categories, and also categories more tied to the film. I would have been okay with Vampire winning this as well. I think Olivia Rodrigo, if anything, her best shot was taking it home with Vampire. That's a very good song from her. So that's a bit of shame, but at the end of the day, I'm, totally down with Miley taking it for Flowers. I also thought Antihero was also a likely winner, but, honestly, I would have given Antihero a win and snubbed Midnights. That's what I would have done, because Antihero is a decent pop song, all right? It's a decent song. But the rest of Midnights, there's only a couple other decent songs. So, Producer of the Year non-classical went to Jack Antonoff. I am not at all surprised here. And if we're talking about Ocean Boulevard, I mean, 100% deserved. If we're talking about Midnights, not so much. Um, but it is what it is. Best New Artist went to Victoria Monet. I was so glad. I was really worried it was going to go to Ice Spice. I'm sorry, but I do not get the appeal of Ice Spice. I think that she is not delivering anything that is well, it's just a personal preference. It's not jiving with me. Of course, I would have been okay with Coco Jones or Noah Kahan taking home this award, but really this was meant to be Victoria's. I mean, those artists are a little more new to the scene, and hopefully their moments will come as well. Song of the year went to What Was I Made For from Barbie by Billie Eilish. And this was a really pleasant surprise because, again, I thought that Flowers, Antihero, and possibly even Vampire were all the top bids. I wouldn't have even necessarily put it, What Was I Made For, in my top three most likely to win. So, I mean, of course, A and W would have been nice for Lana, but in this lineup, I didn't see it standing a chance. But Miley took home Record of the Year instead, and I think that makes much more sense. If we're going to be rewarding songwriting, this award should definitely go more to songs like Vampire or What Was I Made For, or songs like Butterfly by Jon Batiste. Whereas songs like Dance the Night and Kill Bill and Flowers, those are a little bit more about the entire package, polished studio recording. Um, so if we're just clearly talking about lyricism and melody, Billie Eilish needed this win. And so I am almost certain she's going to take home Best Original Song at the Oscars. I really, really hope I'm Just Ken doesn't upset it, especially after the whole Barbie snub controversy. I think that Ken has already dominated the conversation a little too much around Barbie. Barbie needs these moments. Like, Margot needs these moments. Margot Robbie needs these moments. Greta Gerwig needs these moments. Even though Greta Gerwig also wrote I'm Just Ken for the movie, Mark Ronson wrote it, but she put it in the movie. It was her choice. I feel like Ken's overshadowing the Barbies is a little sad in the awards conversation. But that's a different video. We'll talk about that at the Oscars. But we come to Record of the Year, where Miley won for Flowers. She was so funny on stage. Also, can we talk about the buccal fat removal? I mean, it's really sad. I really wish so many celebrities were not hopping on that trend because they're looking so gaunt and like kind of weak, and it's just not doing them any favors, and it's aging them. Some people are getting, Hollywood is so infested with this kind of anti-aging thing that it's actually it's inversing the problem. But I would have been not surprised if Victoria Monet could have snuck this through, or SZA. I think if SZA had maybe snuck in this win, it would have been looking a lot better for her win for Album of the Year. But Miley Cyrus, Flowers was just such an undeniable hit. Now, this was definitely, in my view, a legacy award because Flowers is far from her top 10 in her discography. Plastic Hearts deserved so much of this accolades. I mean, even Malibu would have been a much more deserving winner, in my opinion. And of course, how The Climb didn't end up getting any kind of Grammy nomination or awards. This is about time for Miley. I'm very happy to see this for her, and it really was one of the things that made me very happy seeing seeing to play out live. But the Album of the Year win is just Celine Dion coming out was really exciting. I was so happy to see her. She looks so much healthier. Um, and I was getting worried. We were all getting worried because we didn't know what was going on. But I was trepidatious about this win, and it did end up going to Midnight's. Spoiler, no surprise. Um, it's an interesting group of nominees. But to be completely honest with you, there's only two records that I would have put below Midnight's in terms of deserving to win, and those would have been World Music Radio and The Record. All of these other nominees, I would have given over Midnight's the win, even Endless Summer Vacation. And, The Age of Pleasure, I think that's more just because I love Janelle Monáe and what she stands for. I could argue maybe The Age of Pleasure probably didn't deserve it either, but it definitely deserved a nom. But it's just, I mean, SOS. SZA deserved it, but Lana Del Rey was what I was secretly hoping for. But I was just like, is it really possible? Is it really possible? And I did kind of go in with the expectation that it wasn't. But I was really hoping that the Academy was going to learn from the kind of backlash that came out of snubbing Renaissance last year, for them to just play in Black women's faces once again. It's just really kind of alarming. Um, and SZA took 5 years on this record. Taylor puts out in that time frame like 3 or 4 albums. So it's really it's problematic. I'm sorry. Now, of course, again, that's not so much Taylor's fault. Although, to be honest with you, if I were Taylor Swift, especially after this, I would stop submitting my music to the Grammys. I'd be like, look, I've won 4 Album of the Years, and I'm not even 35 years old now. I'm only 35 years old. This is a little ridiculous. Like, let's give other artists a chance. Because now she has a new album coming out. The Academy is doing Taylor a disservice here. What if the Tortured Poets Department is a much better critically acclaimed album? Midnight's did get critical acclaim, but I don't think it deserved a lot of it. But it is not Taylor's most critically acclaimed record. We can all agree. It's probably her least critically acclaimed record out of all of her Album of the Year wins. But not by a large margin. But if the Tortured Poets Department actually ends up being an album that is more worthy of this, like Folklore, for example, it's going to be really frustrating to see a weaker album take what should have gone to. I mean, this is why, I'm not a complete anti-Taylor. I'm not a Taylor hater here. I'm saying I want her best work to win, not her mid work. Midnight's has it in the title. I think Midnight's is a very mid album. And so I'm just I think she's setting herself up. But more importantly, I think that Taylor is pretty much, and I think this win solidifies it, but also the fact that she announced a new album that's not a re-recording, like a new album. Taylor Swift is not doing herself any favors by being this exposed. We have the Super Bowl next weekend, which, by the way, I'm actually really shocked that the Super Bowl is not the first weekend in February. As far as I'm aware, that's always how it's been. But for some reason, the Grammys and the Super Bowl switched places this year, and I have no idea why. But anyhow, we have the Super Bowl next week, and guess who's playing? Travis Kelce. And if I were a betting man, I would feel pretty confident betting on Travis and the Kansas City Chiefs winning. I've seen a lot of people speculate on Twitter, and I'm not buying into the conspiracy political stuff, but like for the NFL, it would be kind of like, if you're going to rig a game, I mean, who cares about the 49ers, right? Well, I'm sorry if any of 49ers fans out there. I don't have a horse in this race. I don't care. I don't care about football. But if the Eagles are in, I maybe care a teeny, teeny bit because I'm also from the same area as Taylor Swift, Philadelphia. But, you can't write a rom-com this cheesy. I mean, for Taylor to be having, this insanely highly grossing tour, plus this insanely highly grossing box office smash with her Eras Tour movie, plus all of the acclaim off of her last album and all of these awards, winning Album of the Year, and then having her new boyfriend, which is at first very big PR success for them, winning the Super Bowl. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs have ever won the Super Bowl while Travis has been playing for them, but I might be wrong. I can look that up. That is just very, like, girl, your life is too perfect. I hate saying this, like, we need to knock you down a few pegs, but if I was Taylor, I'd be like, and I'm about to put out another album that already has this obscene level of pre-order and hype. It's just, overexposure is a problem. And, I'm seeing some public opinion turn on her. I definitely think that the Black community on Twitter is not too happy with her, mainly because they're taking out the Grammys, the frustration with the Grammys on her for the Album of the Year win over SZA. But there's also the fact that Celine Dion, Taylor on stage was not the most gracious towards her, visibly, publicly. I do believe that Taylor was caught up in the moment. I do believe she didn't expect to win, which fair play to her. I wouldn't have expected it either if I were her. If I were her, I would have said, Lana, she brought Lana Del Rey on stage. Some people are divided on whether that was a little humiliating for her. I'm a little bit unsure as to myself how I feel about it. At first watching it, I was like, oh, I'm so glad to see Lana Del Rey on stage because, she does feature on a song and Jack Antonoff is so in close with both of them. But then I was like, maybe it is a little humiliating, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. To see her kind of in the corner, I mean, it did kind of give off a little bit of like, watch me win this award that should have gone to you, even though most people, I think, well, most Black people agree it should have gone to SZA. And again, I'm being objective here. I think it should have gone to SZA as well, commercially, but also critically. I think SZA had the best package. Um, Lana Del Rey is just, I mean, I'm a much bigger fan of her, so I'm always going to root for her. But it is just, it's not a good look. And then, yeah, to not acknowledge Celine Dion at all in her speech when you had so many other artists gushing over, Miley gushing over Mariah Carey, it really just, I mean, I know they probably did. They had that photo where they are hugging. And, Celine does have this condition where maybe like a full on hug. Taylor was a little worried. She was like, I don't know if I have permission to hug her. But, she could have held her hand. She could have visibly been like a little bit more engaged with her, making eye contact. She basically just took the trophy from Celine as if Celine was just somebody holding that on stage. And it's not only is it Celine Dion, but the fact that Celine being on that stage is a blessing, considering what she's going through right now. It just, on top of it all, and that pissed a lot of Black Twitter off too, because Celine Dion is sort of their adopted white, godmother. I mean, Celine is sort of like a figurehead to a lot of, especially Caribbean households. So it didn't sit well with a lot of people, but the Swifties are all coming to her defense. And I'm like, look, I don't want to be like completely one side versus the other. I just want to objectively look at it and say like Taylor can make mistakes and live TV is tough. So I don't want to say that Taylor made the most egregious snafu, but I do think that Taylor messed up on stage there. It's not like a career-ending thing by any means, but insult to injury. It was already not a great look that she was taking home the award in the first place. At least she didn't say, something as tone deaf as what Harry Styles said on stage last year. But still, people like me don't win these kinds of things. That was, who was giving him advice there? Anyway, but I at the end of the day, Taylor, I really think could benefit from just taking like a good year with like very little, press, commotion and release around her, because you've got to make the public want you to come back. And if you are constantly feeding content and you are never giving us a break, and she's always been very prolific with albums, but she was a little bit better before, at least before the pandemic, but especially before like 2023, at going into hiding a little more. And with Travis and with the NFL and with the Eras Tour, it has just been all too much at once. And she's also dipping into Hollywood. She's been spotted with, the Deadpool director and Ryan Reynolds, and like she might have roles in like she's like working on a movie supposedly. So she's gonna start encroaching into like Hollywood, and it's just it's like if she took a little bit more time away before she came back, wouldn't be a problem. But people are gonna start groaning when they hear that Taylor Swift is releasing another album, or when her entire album blocks everyone else on the charts. And more importantly, when she releases every single year that all the awards go to her, and especially all the nominations. So yeah, it's a little much. I love that she puts out music. I think the Tortured Poets Department album is going to be an album that she's not going to push so much commercially. I think because she's going to be in the middle of tour, she's probably going to feel like it's more of a folklore, or even more so an Evermore, where she sort of just releases it and then doesn't acknowledge it ever again. But when she puts out this much content, you can't blame her. She can't promote everything to the level of certain big promoted out eras, because if she's releasing albums so frequently, there's just not the time. Oh, my cat's here. Hello. Speaking of Taylor Swift and kitties. But yeah, so I really do. I want Taylor to stay in the positive graces of public opinion, but I am seeing a turn. I also think I wasn't going to dive too much into this, but the ongoing conflict in the Middle East and her continued silence about it is not helping. Although I have to tell people that, I have to remind people that Taylor is not the only artist who is not saying anything about this conflict. You can't just come for her and not come for Beyonce and Drake and Ed Sheeran and Adele and all these others. But that's leaving a sour taste. I do want to point out there was the In Memoriam segment where Annie Lennox performed Sinead O'Connor's iconic song, Nothing Compares to You. I did miss this moment live in the telecast. I was really upset I missed it, but I watched it back, and Annie Lennox was the perfect person for that tribute. And in the spirit of Sinead, and this was so perfect, she called for a ceasefire. And that was such a wonderful moment to see broadcast on the TV. And CBS, unsurprisingly, cut off her mic, but it didn't catch it in time. And especially since there was another performance where I believe an Israeli artist did bring a bunch of Israeli musicians and a few Palestinian to perform on stage, sort of like a we are the world kind of thing for peace in the region. There was very little mention of Palestinians and the lives lost on that side. It was mostly about October 7th. And so I think a lot of, progressives are upset about the fact that once again, major media, is whitewashing the situation. And so yeah, it's great that Annie Lennox did that. That was in the spirit of Sinead. If you thought that was, if anyone wants to say that that was uncalled for or taking away from Sinead in any way, that was 100% in the spirit of Sinead, because Sinead had spoken out against the atrocities in Gaza multiple times in recent years, and so it was something she would have 100% done herself. And so, having someone with the balls to do that on the stage like that on broadcast television is just really important, really important. I kind of do understand why Taylor Swift wouldn't do it, because, like, she has a lot of eyes on her and she has a bottom line and she's a businesswoman. She's pretty much a corporation. And she's also touring internationally this year, and she has fans to protect, not just herself. So, I'm not siding with the corporations, but I'm just saying, like, we need to be realistic here, okay? We need to be realistic. Um, with all that being said, there were some things to take away from the Grammys that were to be exciting. I mean, Victoria Monet and Miley Cyrus getting their first Grammys, not only nominations but wins. That was a really exciting thing. But yeah, and I'm also happy for Paramore. I wouldn't have given it to This Is Why. I think that is one of their weaker albums. They definitely deserved it for Past Records. It's strange that Paramore never had a Grammy until now, but I'm happy to see it. But there's still so much work to be done with diversifying and overhauling the people in that academy. And I also really do wonder, what is it going to take for not just a Black woman, but a woman of color to win Album of the Year? Because it's been 25 years. Not even this century yet has. I was 6 years old. Y'all, what is going on? What is going on? Let me know in the comments, what were your thoughts on the ceremony? What are the biggest snubs for you? Do you agree, disagree? Be interested to hear. Thank you all, and correct me if I said anything that's factually incorrect. I try, but and so I thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe, and if you're new here, like this video if you enjoyed, and I will see you all in my next video. I will be talking about the Oscars. Lots to cover there too. So I'll be making a video recapping it after the fact. So stay tuned for that next month. I wish it was sooner. The Oscars used to be in February, but they're pushing it back into March again. Don't like that. It's way too late. Way too late. But something to look forward to there. And I will see you all in the next one. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. Peace, love, and light. Bye.